Hi, everybody. Thank you and welcome for joining Digital Campaigning in 2024, The Essentials. We have about 75 people registered and a little over 25 here, with more coming in. Everyone will get a link via Eventbrite to the recording after this is over, so feel free to share it with friends and colleagues. But you who are here live are the ones who get to ask the questions live. So you are the winners, but everyone's a winner if you get the video at the end. So we'll just take it that way. Thanks again. I updated this presentation extensively for 2024. It's intended as a sort of a high-level approach to digital campaigning. It's the first of a series of trainings I'm going to do this summer, and I'll include a link to the next one in the follow-up email after this session. The next one is going to be an online fundraising 101. At the moment, I'm planning to have that 2 weeks from today. And then after that, I'll do one on list building, the ethical and effective ways to build a list. There's a lot of unethical ways to build lists out there, but we want to steer away from those. And then after that, I'm going to do a two-parter on digital advertising, one for nonprofits and one for political campaigns. They'll cover a lot of the same ground, but with very different emphases, as you can imagine. And I invite your questions. Please place them in the comments as we go. I'll be breaking periodically to take a look at those. And if anything absolutely urgent comes up as we go, I am watching my email on a second screen. So you can try cpd@epolitics.com or just put it in the chat. So why don't we go ahead and get rolling here? And also just welcome everyone. I see some old friends and plenty of new friends, and I'm very excited to help put digital campaigning in context for this year. So let us jump to the substance. So first, just a little about me. I've been in the digital politics world since the late 20th century. I came to DC for the political side of the dot-com boom. And the great thing about that is that, when you've been in the field a long time, you get to learn things as they come out. You don't have to learn them all at once like someone who's new is. So I hope that this perspective will help. I'm a digital strategy consultant myself, working with nonprofits and political groups. I'm an advocate for causes I care about. I've been running the website epolitics.com since 2006. It took a little pandemic hiatus, but I'm in the process of getting that rolling again. And it covers the tools and tactics of digital politics. I'm an author of the ebook you see to the right, and you can find that at epolitics.com. It's available as a PDF or as a Kindle ebook. And I play bass in a truly rock and roll, kick-ass rock and roll band. So I do digital, just a quick breakdown. I do digital advertising strategy. I place digital ads. I help organizations set organization-wide digital strategy, often after a program audit. So I'm happy to help dive into statistics and processes and help people figure out how to do their jobs as effectively as they can. Also, email strategy, list building, social media, digital project execution, all the good stuff. So, where am I coming from here? I got my start in Texas politics in the early 90s. I worked in the legislature. And if you ever have a chance to work in a state legislator or a mayor's office or work for a city council member, this is the kind of retail level politics that I think is incredibly educational. And in my case, it gave me a very pragmatic sense of how to do politics and advocacy. And I think that'll come through in this talk as we go along. And I'm actually in Texas as we speak. I'm helping my parents for a couple of weeks. I'm joining you from Palestine, Texas, in East Texas. So let's start off with a few things not to do. So yes, I think the first the first consideration is to not be like Mark Robinson, who is running for governor in North Carolina and does not appear to like a whole lot of people that you and I probably am perfectly happy being around, right? But the reason I bring this up is that his hateful language that he basically hateful things that he put on social media are coming back to haunt him now. Now, it doesn't bother him because, you know, he's perfectly comfortable with the horrible things he's said. But most of us don't want our worst impulses, that tweet we put out when we were a little drunk at night and angry about something. That's not what we want to come back. So just remember that the internet itself has a long memory, and many, many things that you say and do, if you place them online, will come back to haunt you. That's obviously true for candidates. It's also true for individual activists and for organizations. So I would just suggest that if you're going to put out a particularly hot take, you might stop for a second and think, how's this going to look in 3 years? Anyway, don't be like Mark Robinson on many levels. But big picture, why do we campaign online? And if I were giving this talk in person, this is where I would get people to raise hands and jump in. But since we're remote, we can't really do that quite so easily. So I'll just give you the answer. The big picture, we campaign online because that's where the people are. And if there's a torch wielding mob forming out there, you want it on your side and not on the other people's side. So the internet is where people do just about everything now. I don't have to tell this crowd that. Sometimes when I talk to folks, they still believe that, say, only younger people use digital tools, but that is obviously no longer true. Just about any community or organization in the United States, increasingly around the world, is going to be communicating digitally, whether through traditional computer, laptop, tablet, or most likely these days, mobile phones. And this kind of question is going to come up repeatedly as we go along. So also staying big picture, I'm going to come back to two ideas again and again. And that's that, we tend to focus on the technologies, right? But really bigger than the technologies are the sort of the crucial ingredients. And in so much of our outreach, those two ingredients are content and relationships. So content, obviously, all the photos, the videos, the text that we ever put online. Relationships are the channels through which that information spreads, whether that's the relationships you have on a vast scale with your email list, if you're managing an email list, down to one-on-one relationships with individual activists, with journalists, with bloggers, with TikTok, TikTok influencers. But it really does come down to relationships. And when you are managing social media channels or you're managing email, you really are managing relationships on a large scale. So every communication you have with people, every time they encounter you, either online or in person, that's going to affect their proclivity to act on your behalf. That's going to affect whether or not that you are going to get volunteer time from them, donations from them, emails to Congress, phone calls to other decision makers. The content mobilizes people. The relationships are the channels through which that content spreads. And just a reminder as we go along, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll get to them. So another point is that just about everything we do in the digital politics, digital advocacy world is basically recreating some kind of action that has traditionally taken place in the real world, right? These days, politicians still kiss babies, but now they take that content and they put it on Facebook so that these small personal interactions can actually ripple out and have a much larger effect. And we're going to talk quite a bit about sort of the circular nature of the self-reinforcing nature of so much of our outreach, and also how to take advantage of something you create in one place and use it in another. So the key question here, though, whenever somebody says, hey, why don't we try XYZ? If you're a campaign, the question is it going to get somebody to vote for you? If you're a nonprofit or an advocacy campaign, it might be is this going to move the needle on public opinion? Or is it going to raise money? Or is it going to help us build our lists? Or is it going to help us mobilize supporters? So you have to be kind of ruthless, right? Because, when we're in the digital politics, digital advocacy world, resources are finite. We do not have infinite time, and we certainly do not have infinite money. So we need to pick carefully the approaches that we use. And generally, you're going to try to pick the tools and tactics that match your own strengths and weaknesses. If you are an organization with a big grassroots following, big grassroots community, grassroots action, grassroots fundraising may work perfectly well, but you may not be so great at developing, in-depth policy ideas. So in a case like that, you might team up with another organization that's better on the policy front, and you help amplify their messages through the grassroots. That way, both of you win. Both of you are able to take advantage of your strengths and account for your weaknesses. So yes, if you are a campaign, just a quick reminder that what matters is election day, and elections are still a zero-sum game. One person wins, another one loses. Advocacy politics can be more subtle, sometimes in a good compromise. Everyone can win and everyone can lose a little bit, but on election day, it's not that way. So before we dive into that, just to make sure that folks don't have questions, I don't see anything new in the chat, so we can move along until the next question comes up. But I really encourage you guys to take advantage of our time, because I'm happy to see what comes up. I always learn things from the Q&A. So I'm always happy to see what questions folks come up, because they'll often come up with things that I hadn't thought about before. So a modern digital campaign, again, we're still talking like 10,000 foot view here, not digging into the details, but you're going to need some kind of online hub. And as we'll discuss, for most of us, that's still going to be a website. But you also need ways to reach out to people. And sometimes that's social, sometimes that's advertising, sometimes that's peer-to-peer texting or peer-to-peer word of mouth, right? But you need ways to reach out that are typically going to send people back to that online hub where they will have ways to stay in touch. Traditionally, that's been email and more recently social media, but also text messaging, phone calls, meetups, local gatherings, rallies, whatever it is. But ways, you need a place for people to go. You need ways to reach new people, and then you need ways to stay in touch with the people you have connected with. And so, yeah, just to set the context for everything that's going to come before. So typically we have website, email for fundraising and mobilization, not for spamming, thank you. Social media for outreach and mobilization, text messaging, video, grassroots campaigning, online advertising, and monitoring. And like I said, this can get pretty complicated, pretty intricate soon. So it really helps to keep those sort of fundamental points that I made earlier, to keep those front of mind. So yeah, here's a visual demonstration of that modern campaign. We've got everything from a Trump Live video. Oh, good fun. I'm sure that was a true joy. To John Tester's website, to some Bernie Sanders action going on down there. Just a little glimpse at what a modern digital campaign can involve. And like I said, this is just a glimpse. But ideally, you want these pieces to be working together in a virtuous circle, right? Your social media outreach piece pushes people to, one, get involved, of course, and it may push people to share content and to, help you reach out beyond your immediate following. But then you've got to direct them back to some way that they can stay in touch in a more robust sort of way. So often a lot of our social media work can revolve around getting our folks to follow us on email as well. So social media, building your email program, and then once you have people on your email program, you might be emailing them a link to share something on Facebook. This is an old trick. If you really want to get something shared on Facebook or some other digital platform, send people an email and or a text and ask them to share it and include a simple link. I used to look on Facebook. I would sometimes see posts that had way more shares than they had likes. And that suggested to me that somebody had, the page owner had blasted out a share ask and got people to share it, because more often, a lot more people are going to like something than share it. So keep an eye out for that ratio and see if you see it elsewhere. But it's just one example of how the pieces fit together. And here, everyone's favorite, I'm sure everyone on the call loves Rand Paul like nobody's business. Even if you're not a fan of his politics, you can still learn from some good practices here. And this is from about 10 years ago, when the Orwellian, the legislation with the Orwellian name of USA Patriot Act, which was a surveillance, bill. When that was up for reauthorization, Rand Paul, as a libertarian, was opposed to it. And he was filibustering on the Senate floor, of course, with breaks when he would go out to talk to, Fox or CNN or someone like that. But when you went to his website, while this was going on, you would see this landing page, this splash screen. And so, they were running Rand Paul's office, or his campaign arm, was running ads pointing at this. Their surrogates, when they were on television, might mention it. Rand Paul himself might mention it. They would put out statements from his office, everything pointing back to the website where this splash page would pop up. And you'll note it's not asking for much. It's asking for first name, last name, zip, and email address. Just enough to be able to follow up with somebody and run a geo-targeted email or other program, getting them. And I will also note, Stand with Rand is red. You're going to see this a lot, that the action buttons are frequently red, that humans seem to be very sensitive to the color red. The idea is that's probably because it's the color of blood, which would make sense for it to be baked pretty deep into us. But you're going to see a lot of red donate buttons because they tend to pop out. Thank you. Paul notes that my reception is a little garbled. I hope that is on his end and not mine. But if you're having any trouble with the audio, please let me know. So this here is a good example of how the pieces can integrate together. And of course, once you click Stand with Rand, then you are going to start receiving fundraising asks pretty darn quickly. Thank you, Laura, for letting me know the audio is fine there. Yeah, it's just so hard to tell. It used to be here in my parents' house in East Texas. We used to have terrible internet, but we got it fixed over the winter. So I'm taking a risk by doing this webinar here. So anyway, let us move on to the next topic. So now that we've talked about the big picture pieces, let's start drilling down to the individual tools and tactics. And then we're going to go look at some big trends at the very end. So why would we build a website in a social? Thank you. Somebody said if audio breaks up a bit, but it's understandable. So as long as everything's working and the recording is getting me, we'll be okay. So why would we build a website in a social world? Now, 4 or 5 years ago, this was the bigger question, right? Campaigns or advocacy campaigns, especially if they were local, might rely on something like a Facebook page. For an individual influencer, your online hub might be a TikTok profile or an Instagram profile, right? But for organizations and campaigns, you really do need a website. For one thing, it's because you can control that environment, right? Facebook is messing with your content. You can't control what Facebook does with what you put out there. You used to be able to customize Facebook pages to highlight particular actions, but those sort of things have fallen by the wayside. But the website, you can really set it up to make your case. And I have candidates' case there, but it's also an organization's case. And you do that through content, through video, through text, through images. But really the main goal of certainly of political campaign websites but also, a lot of organizational activist websites is converting visitors, right? You don't want somebody to come to your website without finding a way to stay in touch with you long term. So have those email signups be prominent. Have the social media buttons perhaps be prominent. But also, the website's going to serve as sort of a hub for the rest of your outreach. Your YouTube videos the description should have a link back. Your Facebook posts should have a link back. I can't really do that on Instagram unless it's an ad or you put it in the sidebar, but the same basic concept applies. Your advertising is typically going to be pointing back to landing pages on your website. So this is where you're gathering your pieces, you're making your case, you're converting a moment's interest that someone has into a longer term connection. And you may well be processing donations. Now, nowadays, a few years back, you would probably be using a donation processing page through, say, the same company that does your mass email, right? If you're using Every Action or Action Network or something like that, engaging networks, you may well have a package that includes email, possibly a website, and donation processing. But it's also very common, particularly for campaigns, to nowadays go ahead and just link to an ActBlue page or something like that. So your website is still where people find the donation link, but it may be processed by a third party. So let's take a quick look at one example. This is kind of a dreamy looking campaign website. This screenshot's a couple years old, so it might have changed since then. But you can see the basic points here, right? The text is putting out the message the campaign wants. This man is a doctor. He puts service first, and he's a true believer in service as a concept, right? Military veterans, nurses, others who really help the people out can take advantage of a similar sort of dynamic here. Somebody has a question. One time I had a website that no one visited. How can you change that? Well, there's a lot coming up about that. So just stay on the line and we'll talk more. But you also see the action buttons are very focused. Get involved, volunteer. And what color is that contribution button? It's red. So note here that he's even asking for less information on the email sign up than that Rand Paul example I gave earlier. The more you ask, basically every extra field that somebody has to fill out is one little more obstacle. So you may just end up asking for zip and email and then following up later to try to get more information. Sometimes organizations will set up a multi-step sign-up process. From a form like here, you give the absolute minimum, and then the follow-on page, asks for more information. But you're already doing okay with email and zip because you can communicate with people and you can communicate geographically. Just about any email advocacy system you're ever going to find these days is going to let you geo-target. It's going to let you decide, for instance, to send your message to people in Minnesota and not Louisiana, or and as an aside, that can sometimes trip you up. I once, for an advocacy organization I was working for, I once sent out a message to people in Arizona linking to an action that was specifically for them. But when I did the setup of the online action, the email your Congress member, I accidentally set it for District of Columbia only. And since I was in DC, it worked great when I tested it. But very quickly, after we sent out several thousand emails to people in Arizona, I had to send out a follow-on with the correct link. So there is a reason that sending a mass email is the scariest thing that we typically do in this business. So, but yeah, websites like this exhibit good practices. Contemporary campaign websites are sort of cookie cutter, but that's because they generally have the same sort of tasks to perform. It can get much more complicated if, for example, you're a issue organization. I've worked with organizations over the years that have just sort of built their content as it came, and it's not always the easiest to be able to find what you're looking for. Some good questions coming in, but I'm going to get to that one later. That's a good one. So this is websites. Now, of course, one of the things that the website is doing is trying to get you to sign up for the email list. So let's look at some emails. Now, this was pretty new. This one just came out after the Trump felony convictions. And note the practices here, right? As Indivisible, if you don't know them, they have local chapters and help people get involved in politics in their communities. So they're very focused on, local meetings and things like that. Even if the volunteer work you're going to do is for a congressional campaign. But you see here, they're starting with a little bit of fear, because Trump pulled in $53 million and he pulled in a lot more, or even more later. So then they're challenging you to get in on the game. And they're also making it relatively easy, right? The links are easy to see. And it says, so if you have a few dollars to spare. Now, I might want to test that ask versus some other ways for it. They're asking $1,000. They're trying to make it relatively easy. Now, if they were running, comprehensive fundraising program, they might send a different message to somebody who's given $100, right? Like if I've given $5 in the past, they might ask me for 10. If I've given 30, they might ask me for 40. If I've given 100, they may ask me for 200. That kind of list segmentation can really help get, make a few percent difference here and there on the rate of return. But the point is that despite many, many, many predictions of email's demise, it is still the main way that political campaigns and nonprofits stay in touch with people and get them to give money. Now, more campaigns than ever are also texting people. But the amount of money people give in a text is usually relatively small. I could be wrong on that, so if you know better, please let me know. But also, there are only so many texts you can send people before they start to unsubscribe. And the amount of information you can put into a text is relatively limited. So what you'll often see is email and texting working together. Email keeps the relationship going. Social media keeps the relationship going. But then when you really need to ask for money in the moment, then you might send out a text. But the reason that the text might work is because of all of the emails and the social media that you've been putting in front of their eyeballs. But really, when we're trying to raise money, emotion, there are people who give kind of coldly, rationally, particularly at the end of the year when folks might have set aside a certain amount of money to give to different nonprofits. But very often it's in the moment. And fear and anger are profound motivators. I wish it were different, but nice, happy messages generally don't raise that much money. But you may send nice, happy messages some of the time to keep people engaged, because too much fear can be a turnoff. So it's always a balancing act. And just so big question is often how much to send. If you're sending too much, people will typically start to let you know by unsubscribing. They'll really let you know by marking you as spam. So so another point to think about is the long-term demonstration of value. I remember what you'll often see is organizations or campaigns raising money for very specific and concrete things. Literature to leave behind when people are doing door-to-door canvassing. Or we need to be able to hire volunteer coordinators in this state. Or some organizations run high-profile billboards and might ask you for money for that. But it's making the donation more concrete. That's the kind of long-term, and then also just demonstrating value over the long term. People want to feel that their money's not wasted, which is another reason that donor matches work so well. If someone thinks that their $5 is actually going to be worth $10 for the organization, then they may be more likely to give. But of course, no one's going to give unless you ask. Well, someone might, but relatively few people are going to give money without you asking. Sometimes in the nonprofit space, people are still a little shy about begging for money. But if we don't ask, we're not going to get it. But you also want to offer things other than asks. If all you do is ask for money, that is a good way to let people, give people a reason to leave you. So can you offer, say, a webinar like this, for instance, or, some kind of online meet and greet with a prominent supporter or with people who work for the campaign or for the organization? Are there even content that you can give them that they might really like, a video, or for a really nerdy group, a policy analysis, right? So that you've given them value, and then when you come back from money, you can feel, they can feel that they're really contributing to something that's worthwhile. So another quick point is very often in email fundraising and advocacy will have a series of messages that form kind of a narrative arc. This is very common for year-end fundraising in particular, but we should never let a narrative arc, a set of messages that are pre-prepared, get in the way of seizing the moment. Just like this individual or indivisible message, they may well have several days in advance, right? And had it ready for when the verdict came down, knowing that Trump was going to raise a lot of money off of it. But this is striking while the iron is hot. Democrats, progressives were excited about the conviction. It's nice to see some kind of accountability in this world. And it was a moment when they may have been more willing than usual to open their wallets. So never miss that moment. And I have some other stories, but we're going to run out of time if I tell them all. So let us move on from email to social media. And as we will discuss, social media is a bit in flux these days. I will note that a lot of organizations that had really relied on Facebook sharing for advocacy content have been hurt in recent years because Facebook has de-emphasized the sharing of political related content or content that it deems political. If you are a nonprofit, if you try posting about climate change, you may not be able, probably be forced to run that as a political ad. But if Exxon wants to run an ad touting their latest climate destroying project, that's not going to be political. So the deck is stacked against us a little bit. Awesome. Thanks, guys. But with Facebook, the conservatives are getting hurt too. This Facebook and de-emphasis on political content, which recently they've applied to Instagram as well. But a lot of the conservative media outlets had gotten over-reliant on traffic from Facebook, and now it's really dropped off. Daily Wire, I just saw some statistics today that some of these sites had lost 2/3 of their incoming traffic. So yet another example of why we want to build relationships with people, right? And relationships that can follow us, that can move as people shift platforms. That it's less about the technology and it's more about the people using the technology. Now, Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it, there are still, plenty of communities out there. As I understand, like for instance, Black Twitter was a very powerful advocacy community for a long time. I do not think it has gone away. I hope it doesn't. But Twitter does seem to be actively trying to run people like most of us out of the scene. Instagram still powerful for visuals, as we'll talk. Well, we can go ahead and mention it now. For both Facebook and Instagram, if you want to reach people with an advocacy or a political campaign message, you're probably going to have to pay for the privilege these days. We have a couple of is there a couple of questions here? Is there a way around meta tagging political content, a way to cheat the algorithm? Good question. Sometimes just changing the text a little bit can make a difference. I would recommend testing different options and seeing what works. It's likely to change over time, so it's not going to be like a guarantee. But yeah, I've definitely seen posts that one text version got flagged as political, but another text version might not. Sean Dakin notes that Threads is working well. Yeah, I mean, Threads is okay. I'm just not, I'm on it. I'm just not picking up any followers. I don't think a whole lot of new people are flocking to Threads beyond the folks who adopted it early on. But we shall see. And for those of you who don't know, Threads is Facebook's Twitter equivalent, Twitter killer. But like I said, it just I'm not seeing like an exponential growth that the kind of exponential growth that Threads would need to have if it's ever really gonna become a dominant player in the field. YouTube still very powerful for video. And if you are on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of political advertising these days. I've been getting Biden campaign fundraising video ads pretty consistently, regardless of where I am. But one note is with video these days, if you post a link on Facebook to a video that's on YouTube, Facebook's not going to show it to very many people because Facebook wants you to post your video natively on their platform. So what ends up happening is most of us have to post stuff on YouTube and on Facebook. It's a minor annoyance. But the advantage of having it out on YouTube, of course, is that it's going to do well in Google search results. A YouTube client rep told me last year that the first 3 or 4 words in a YouTube headline really, really count for search engine optimization. And that the tags help with, YouTube tells you when you're setting up a video, the tags don't matter much, but apparently they help with related video. Now, this was last year, the year before. As always, things could be different now, but pay very close attention to your YouTube headlines and be sure to include links back to your website or to whatever you need people to go to. Be sure to include those in your in the YouTube description. For TikTok, it's a big question right now, right? TikTok does allow advertising. It does not allow campaign advertising for candidates, but advocacy videos, a lot of organizations have not really started to use TikTok aggressively, and they may not be a good fit for it. My sense is that with TikTok, the more you can get TikTok natives creating video on your behalf, and not just traditional influencers, but I mean like your individual activists or your staff, right? TikTok probably needs to get used right now by people who are more native to the environment. But of course, an organization can put a video out, have employees or activists amplify it. But just do keep in mind that something that doesn't fit with sort of the customs and rules of the medium is going to be open for mockery. So, and then social media advertising. So this is the big question for a lot of us, right? And it has been for, the 15 odd years that Facebook advertising has been around. Do we emphasize organic content that shares, that goes from person to person, or do we try to put money behind things? And for most of us, it's going to be a mix of both. It's hard to beat a really motivated group of grassroots supporters posting on your behalf, right? But particularly with advocacy or political related content, that's just not going to spread as far as it used to. So typically we have to at least give things a boost with a little bit of money. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to be doing a 2-part training on digital advertising, one for nonprofit organizations and the other focusing on campaigns. So sign up for the Substack or stay in touch via epolitics.com to see those trainings coming up. And I'll include links in the follow-up message from this video here. So so most of us have to rely on a mix. It is frustrating to spend a lot of time and money building a Facebook page and not be able to communicate with those people, but that is the way Zuckerberg wants it, and we live in his world. So, quick talk about mobile. The rule number one now is that everything's got to work on a phone, right? Your fundraising emails are being opened on a phone. Your action emails are being opened on a phone. When someone goes to your website, odds are they're going to it via a phone. So test everything. Test your website, test your landing pages, test your donation system. Make sure the buttons are easy to use. One advantage that tools like ActBlue have is that once someone has entered their, information for one organization or campaign they're giving to, they have the option to save it for future donations. And that enables one-click giving. And one-click giving is a lot easier on a phone than trying to put in your credit card number while you're on the bus. Yeah. So make sure everything works on a phone. If you want an easy or a classic way to user test is get someone who has not been to your website, get them to bring it up on the phone and then give them a task to perform. If they can't perform it, you probably have a usability problem. We have a quick question in the chat. What is the minimum number of followers you need to get organic content sharing? There's not a hard and fast rule. You just consider that only 2 or 3% of the people who follow you are likely to see your content organically, and even fewer of them are going to take action. So there is no minimum number for a Facebook page. It's just the more people you have, the more likely you are more likely organic sharing is going to happen. But of course, you may have to spend some money boosting posts to get that content in front of people in the first place. So that's why, I have emphasized repeatedly trying to get people on your email list or your SMS text list. Yeah. And Paul Hogarth asks, getting more Facebook followers to see your content, isn't Facebook groups a better way than Facebook pages? Well, they do very different things. Facebook groups are ways, basically a back channel discussion group, but people have to choose to join that. And even if you have a big page, a minority of your followers are generally going to join your Facebook group. Also, it's relatively easy to run advertising to build the Facebook page. I'm not so sure about that for Facebook groups. Facebook a few years ago was really emphasizing groups. They seemed to have backed off from that. So I think that a group can be very useful if you want to get your volunteers or your supporters talking to each other, but nothing's going to substitute for the Facebook page. And ultimately for either organic sharing or for paid promotion. Also on mobile phones, we have grassroots tech. We have all of the different apps that campaigns and organizations use to stay in touch with each other, or stay in touch with supporters. You have things like the minivan that lets door-to-door, gives directions to houses, to door-to-door canvassers, can get talking points, can allow volunteers to enter data from those conversations they have with voters. The most common grassroots tech you're going to see now are either relational organizing tools or peer-to-peer texting apps. And the peer-to-peer Hustle is the best known of those. It basically lets a single volunteer or staffer send text to many, many people in an hour just by clicking send over and over and over. It gets around some of the limitations on bulk texting. And there are relational organizing tools, and I'll note that the Biden campaign is using a tool called Reach, which was originally developed for AOC's congressional campaign back, I believe, in 2018. And Reach combines a lot of really cool relational organizing features. But the basic idea with relational organizing is you're trying to help volunteers, you're trying to reach voters through people they already know. So a relational app, a volunteer working for your organization might install the volunteer app. That app then goes and looks at their phone contacts, tries to match them to a list of either priority voters or other priority contacts that the campaign has, and then encourages you to send them a message. So rather than a message coming from out of the blue, the message can come from someone they already know. Let me check the chat here for a couple of questions. Yes, reach is very powerful, and the Biden campaign did training starting last fall in it. So if you are volunteering for campaigns this summer and fall, you're very likely to have the option to use a relational app. And then you can barrage your friends and family with messages that I'm sure they'll be very excited to receive. So let us move on. We're starting to so advertising, like I said, we're running a little short on time. So let me just hit some of the high points here. Facebook ads, we talked about. Google search ads, but Google's interface is also YouTube ads. I will note that you're going to see a lot of campaign YouTube ads, but YouTube does not allow first-person targeting, i.e. you can't upload a list of people from the voter file and run ads at them like you can on, say, Facebook. So that makes YouTube less of a precise, basically less of a precise targeting model for or targeting channel for voter turnout, but can still be very, very powerful for issue work and, of course, for political campaigns as well. But it's just you can't quite do the one-to-one match that you can in a lot of other channels. Twitter promoted posts, yeah. Have fun if you want to do that nowadays. I'm not paid. You have to get one of the blue check paid accounts to be able to run promoted posts. I'm not going to do that anymore. Display and banner advertising, you're going to see that everywhere. This is just the classic web banners that you see on content sites. Advocacy organizations, DC-focused advocacy organizations, very, very often use display ads, either running on specific media outlets or targeted via one of the many advanced targeting options that are out there. With display and also with video ads, pre-roll are ads that run before a video plays. They're a pretty common way for campaigns and organizations to reach people, again, across a huge range of websites. CTV and streaming, similarly, I use a platform called Deploy from DS Political is the name of the company, but I can go in and set up display ads, pre-roll video ads, and ads on streaming channels targeting very specific people in very specific slices of the electorate, either through a voter file or through demographic targeting. And again, I'm going to cover these in much more detail in my trainings later this summer. But expect to see a lot of emphasis on streaming this fall. Targeting options, they are all over the place. Geo-targeting, demographic targeting, targeting a list of people you upload. But bear in mind that particularly the social platforms have so many restrictions. If you need to be verified to run political ads on Facebook and Instagram. Google has its own sets of rules for verification. And then I would just say that this can bite you in the butt if you're not careful. I know so many people who have needed to run an ad and found that, say, Facebook deems it political, so that person needs to be approved to run political advertising, and then they can't run the ad in time. So if there's any chance that you're going to be doing Facebook advertising, Google advertising for advocacy and politics, make sure that you have the approvals and all of that done well in advance. And I'm just remembering that my Facebook political ad approval has lapsed and I need to renew it. So here are some examples. I want to point to the guy in the middle there, Vote Pat Curry. He was running for state ledge here in Texas. And when I was here over Christmas, I saw his ads all over the place. The problem is that his district is no closer than 100 miles away to where I'm staying, and even further away from the IP number of my internet connection. So I think his targeting had some problems. Or maybe he was playing four-dimensional chess and I just didn't know about it. But he seemed to be putting a lot of ads in front of people who will never have a chance to vote for him. Off to the right there is an old Martin O'Malley ad. Remember him from 2000? 16, probably not. But it's a good example of the kind of vertical banners that you'll see promoted Facebook posts from Trump, Adam Schiff, Google ad. If you're running a high profile political campaign and your candidate's in the news a lot, Google search ads can be very, very effective. Back in 2008, or after 2008, I remember hearing a talk by the Obama digital director saying that they often got a 4 or 5 times rate of return on Google ads on the simple query Barack Obama. So when people search for Barack Obama, they would land on their ad and give money at a very high rate. However, most of us are not lucky enough to be quite that famous. So, as always, your mileage may vary. So, a quick case study. This is a video ad. Some of you may recognize Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters and other movies, but I work with an organization called the Hometown Project, and they recruit celebrities who grew up in targeted state legislative districts and get them to do videos for the Democratic legislative candidate. But in this ad, we ran this on programmatic video, i.e., pre-roll streaming, so video that people would see on many different websites across the web, and we ran it on Facebook. And of course, we put it out organically to the extent that we could. But we tried to hit people from as many different angles as we could. And now, if we were running this campaign this year, we would use a lot more connected TV / streaming television. So it's the people you're trying to reach are going to be consuming information in a lot of different ways. So the trick is to get it in front of them enough times to make a difference in enough of those channels. So real quick, let's hit some big trends here. Bots, disinformation, and trolls. The image on the left there is amazing to me. This is an Australian legislator. And when a news program was covering her, they altered her image to sex it up. That's pretty wild. And this is the kind of thing I think you're going to be seeing. We have deepfake audio. We have incoherent rules on Facebook and other platforms. The platforms have largely dissolved their safety teams in the last year or the last couple of years. So it's going to be up to you to see what is going on out there. And your best ally in that case is going to be supporters who can tell you when they see problems. But AI is not going to be the sole source. After Biden gave a big speech at the D-Day commemoration earlier this month, the Republicans started putting out deceptively edited clips that made him look like an idiot, of course. So you don't have to have AI or the other side doesn't have to have AI to make your life ridiculously miserable. So another big trend, AI, of course. Disinfo, yes, but in particular, a lot of organizations are using it as a productivity booster. A company called Quiller, Quiller, like a quill pen. Quiller.ai is for Democrats and left-leaning organizations, and it can help you come up with a lot of content variations that you might not have thought of. So basically helping you do more work in less time. Big trend, social media definitely transforming. Twitter is becoming a hellhole before our eyes. Facebook is making it harder for us to get political messages out. So when you see people put out best practices and rules of thumb, as I've mentioned many times going through, something that might have worked well 2 years ago may fail miserably this year. So it really is important to keep up with the latest trends. If you're a Progressive Exchange email list is a good place to be. Obviously, there are a lot of blogs and newsletters that cover social media trends. If you Google around, you'll find a good bet. But when you're looking at anything that has best practices, be sure to check the date because it may be out of date. Ad restrictions, we've already talked about. Just to reiterate, if you're going to be running anything that looks political, be sure that you get approved early. And the big trend that is not going away anytime soon is that people want in on the political process. When I got started in politics almost 30 years ago, the voters were kind of being left out of the process. Their job was to passively consume television ads and vote as they were told. But that is not flying anymore, and it is largely because of the internet. People have so many channels, from YouTube to TikTok to blogs to your own Facebook, profile. So many ways to get the word out and to organize each other. And often that works to your advantage if these are people that are on your side, but you may also have a grassroots mobilization against you. And that can be pretty tough. So just keep in mind that this is one trend that, as far as I can tell, is not going away anytime soon. Almost there. I'll reward you with a nice cat picture, because every online presentation has to have a cat picture. So what's next? So you're going to be creating your own online strategy. I hope that you have figured out from this what are some really essential questions to ask. My summer training series is going to continue. So check out epolitics.com or the Substack, and you can sign up for the Substack from ePolitics, because I'll be promoting the upcoming events out through that. And then, of course, my ebook is epolitics.com/winning. And both of those links are at the beginning of the chat for this. And I believe we have another question here. What about messaging ads, WhatsApp, Messenger, etc., social media? Yeah, honestly, I haven't used those as much, so I don't feel as confident talking about them. But it's a great question, and now you make me want to go dig into that more. So are there any other questions now? I really appreciate you guys sticking through this presentation. I know it's a lot of information in a short period of time. And as I said earlier, I will be sending around the recording as soon as we're done. So last call for questions. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. You've got my contact information there. I'm very happy to answer questions. I'm planning to start doing digital advocacy, digital politics office hours, where folks can stop by for 10 or 15 minutes and ask any questions they have. But so find me online, stay in touch, and thanks again for joining.
Hello, I did ask about getting anybody to look at my website.